Unsolved mysteries can be unsettling, especially if a death is involved, and many seek solace in a church for comfort and support after such an event. However, occasionally, the very place that the bereaved seek solace becomes entangled in the mystery, sometimes in a disturbing and baffling way, leaving those involved nowhere to turn to. Here we'll look at 5 creepy church mysteries that still remain unsolved. Carol Doherty. It was a bright sunny Monday afternoon on October the 22nd, 1962 in Bristol, Pennsylvania, and 9-year-old Carol Doherty set out on her bike heading for the local library. Sadly, that was her last trip. Later that day, her lifeless body was found at St. Mark's Catholic Church, a church she knew well, and a place where nuns encouraged children who were passing to go in and seek sanctuary and pray. When her body was found by her father, her bike was still neatly parked outside of the church. The investigation into her death began, and a suspect was soon arrested. His name was Frank Zajuro, a local handyman who had been seen staggering drunk and heading towards the church around the time Carol was killed. Frank later confessed to the murder. However, investigations were skeptical about his confession and questioned his mental state at the time of his admission. He was later released without charge after the officer who interviewed him admitted that he had coerced the confession out of him. Attention then turned to Joseph Sabadish, a priest at St. Mark. His alibi didn't check out, and it came to light that he regularly purchased women's underwear, and had also propositioned women in his parish. However, Paul Bird, the pastor at St. Mark, became outraged at the insinuations about Sabadish and refused to allow police to speak with him. But investigators were not intimidated and eventually pulled Sabadish in for questioning. After he passed a polygraph test, he was released without charge. Another suspect, a 24-year-old ex-jailbird, was also questioned after he was spotted outside the church on the day of the murder. He denied any knowledge of the murder, although did lie about his whereabouts at the time Carol was killed. He also passed a polygraph test. In 1994, he was put before a grand jury where he refused to answer questions, invoking his Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions that could incriminate him. He was also released without charge. Today, the case has gone cold and the main suspects have passed away. But it is telling that in 2005, Joseph Sabadish's name appeared on a list of 63 priests in Philadelphia who were alleged to have molested children. But the twist in the case is there was one more suspect that the police never interviewed. It was a man who made taunting phone calls to investigators in the days immediately following the murder. The man also chillingly said more children would die. Cryptic messages about the murder were also left in envelopes at the police station, believed to be from the same man. Then in 1992, when Carol's case was covered in a local newspaper, the reporter received several taunting messages from a man who said the case would never be solved. An envelope with a cryptic message also arrived in the newsroom, and another was left under the windshield wiper of his car. Nothing was heard again until 2012, the 50th anniversary of Carol's murder, when again several editors began receiving cryptic emails from an anonymous writer who said Carol's killer would be revealed at last. To date, there has been no further contact. Rothwell Bone Crypt. Rothwell Holy Trinity Church in England was built in the 13th century, and for centuries held a very creepy secret that wasn't discovered until the 18th century, when an unfortunate gravedigger fell through the decaying portion of the church floor into total darkness, before landing and realizing he was surrounded by piles of human bones. According to legend, the man was so traumatized by the event, he went completely insane and never recovered. It's estimated the crypt houses the remains of over 2,500 people and dates back hundreds of years. Although studies have revealed not all the bones are that old, no one knows exactly how the skeletons ended up under the church, although it's speculated that they were exhumed from a nearby graveyard. Others believe they are victims of a fierce battle, or possibly victims of the plague that were buried in a mass grave. Today the mystery remains, and the bones have been catalogued, and the skulls are now neatly lined up on shelves inside the crypt. with their thigh bones displayed in 2 large square piles in the middle. The creepy crypt is also open to visitors who can access the macabre collection through a spiral staircase located at the side of the church. Father Alfred Kunz. The murder of Catholic priest Father Alfred Joseph Kunz is the most expensive and time-consuming investigation in Dane County, Wisconsin's history. And despite an extensive investigation into his death, the case remains unsolved. On March 3, 1998, Father Alfred delivered what would prove to be the last broadcast of his popular local radio show. The next morning, his lifeless body was found lying in a pool of blood in the hallway of St. Michael Catholic Church, in the small rural town of Dane. His throat had been slit. Father Kunz had been a pastor at the church for 32 years, but was a somewhat divisive character. He was also a close associate of Malachi Martin, an author and exorcist, and it's believed Kunz performed several exorcisms before his death. It was revealed that in the weeks leading up to the murder, Kunz felt his life was in danger, possibly because of his investigation into homosexuality and sexual abuse by priests. The night before his murder, fellow priest Father Charles Fior dropped him off at the church after the radio show, and described Kunz as being uncharacteristically withdrawn and troubled, and saw tears in his eyes. In another, possibly unrelated twist, the Dane County Sheriff's Department revealed they investigated a calf mutilation 15 miles away from Kunz's church the day before his murder, a slaughter they believe was linked to his death and was likely carried out by a cult. They also discovered he had been in several secret relationships with women in his diocese. What is unusual and slightly disturbing about this case is that the police do not consider it cold. They believe they know who murdered Kunz, and they have had an unnamed suspect under surveillance for many years, a man who left the town shortly after the murder, but who they have insufficient evidence to arrest, meaning there is a killer known to the police who is still living freely in the community. West End Baptist Church Miracle. On March 1st, 1950, an amazing series of events saved the lives of many people. At the time, it was touted as a miracle, but was it just an extraordinary coincidence? Martha Paul was the choir director at West End Baptist Church in Beatrice, Nebraska. She was a stickler for timekeeping and demanded her choir members arrive at church promptly by 7:25 p.m. for practice. Few dared to be late for fear of losing their place in the choir. However, on the night of March 1st, 1950, every one of them was delayed for various reasons, just as they ready to leave for practice. Here is a rundown of that evening and the various unlinked reasons why they were all running late. The pastor's daughter spilled food on her clothes and her mother needed to iron a new one. Herbert Kipf was trying to get a letter in the mail on time. He planned to be a few minutes late, deciding that he could drop it off on the way to practice. Lucille Jones was engrossed in a radio program and was late, along with Dorothy Wood, whom she was supposed to pick up. Royana Estes and her sister, Sadie, were late because their car wouldn't start. Joyce Black, who lived across the street from the church, was ready but too tired to get up. LaDonna Vangereft was having trouble with a geometry problem. Marilyn Paul, the pianist, had planned to arrive half an hour early, however she fell asleep when her mother, Martha Paul, the choir director, woke her at 7:15 to inform her she was running late, and her mother was also late because of this. Earlier, at around 4:30 p.m, Walter Klempel, the pastor, had turned on the heat to warm the church ready for choir practice. He then left the church to heat up and went home. But instead of it warming the church, it filled up with gas, and at 7:27 p.m, 2 minutes after practice was supposed to start, the church exploded. Since none of the members were on time that day, they all survived certain death. A jumping church in Ireland. Possibly one of the most intriguing mysteries in Ireland is that of the jumping church of Kildamock Ardee. One of the 12th century church's walls has inexplicably moved 2 or 3 feet from its original location, and the ancient church ruin has long been the subject of local legends. It's said the wall moved by itself in 1715 to exclude the grave of a man who was interred inside the church. The man, who ironically was a Mason, abandoned the Catholic faith and turned Protestant. So when he died after falling from the roof of another church he was working on, no one would bury him as he was considered a traitor. His body was brought to Kildamog and laid to rest within the ruined church, just inside the west wall. The very next day, the wall was found to have jumped inwards, leaving the remains outside its sanctified grounds. Another popular explanation is that a great storm caused the wall to shift. However, this seems unlikely because although storms have been known to damage and even flatten buildings, it seems doubtful they have the power to lift up part of a building and set it back down in a new location. The legend of the jumping church has been around for centuries, although there was no visible evidence that the event had occurred. However, when the ruins were restored in 1953, architects were left scratching their heads when they removed the accumulated debris, and it revealed that the wall had been cleanly severed and had moved at least 2 to 3 feet from its foundation. That leaves the question, was it all a natural or supernatural cause that prompted one of the church's walls to shift mysteriously? As crazy as the two theories may sound, they cannot be dismissed entirely, as there is historical evidence that the controversial burial did take place as well as the storm. What do you think? So that's 5 creepy church mysteries that are still unexplained. We hope you've enjoyed this video and would love to hear your thoughts on these 5 in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.